Hey guys, George here from Zero Peer Productions, and today I'm giving my thoughts on Fallout 76 so far. At the time of recording this, I have played around 12 hours, all on the PC version of the beta. One thing I want to note before getting into the video is that these are my personal opinions, based on having played other Bethesda games and comparing my experience to some of those. Not everyone will agree with some of my opinions, and that's perfectly okay. The purpose of this video is so that I can give my thoughts on the game, and give those who are on the fence a better idea of what they can expect from it. Starting off, I want to note that the Fallout 76 beta is a beta in name, and not so much an actual beta of the game. It's pretty much just early access to the game, and is more or less what we can expect the game to be when it launches on November 14th. This alone is a double-edged sword for a few different reasons. Currently, Bethesda plans on having players' progress from the beta carry over once the game is released, which is great in the sense that there are many players who have already racked up over a dozen hours in the beta, and will be able to keep that progress rather than starting over from scratch. However, if someone decides they want to start over when the full game releases, they always have the option of creating an additional character to play with. That being said, having progress from the beta carry over to the full release might have some issues for players who don't get the game until launch. For players that don't get the game until November 14th, they might find themselves at a disadvantage since there will be numerous players running around who are at higher levels and have better gear. I don't think it will cause too much of an issue due to the way that PvP is set up, which I'll touch on later, but I can still see new players feeling discouraged starting off and seeing people who are already level 15 or higher on the official day 1 of the game. So far throughout the beta, Bethesda has implemented a few different updates and patches, which they've been able to do due to the fact that the beta isn't running 24/7. One of the patches that they implemented so far was adding functionality for the Atomic Shop. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Atomic Shop is the game's microtransaction system, although it is only geared towards cosmetic items. I have no issue with the Atomic Shop since it is cosmetic items only, and those purchases will go towards funding updates and new content for Fallout 76. My concern is that Fallout 76 hasn't even launched yet, and one of the first updates implemented into the game was for the microtransaction shop. Now, I'm sure this was already set to go, and that's why we're seeing this first rather than an update or a series of patches to fix bugs, but personally, I would rather Bethesda focus on getting those bug fixes and optimization updates out first, especially when a couple weeks ago, they tweeted about how we should expect a lot of bugs at launch. I'm not saying that I think Bethesda could fix everything between now and launch. Honestly, that's unrealistic, but from a player's perspective, it would be nice to see some of those fixes, even minor ones, as opposed to adding in the microtransaction shop right now. In regards to the shop itself, I don't think it's going to be a hindrance to the game, and there are ways to earn the Atom currency in-game through challenges and achievements. Now, let's get into the performance of the game. As I said earlier, I've only played on PC, so I can't speak to the performance on either Xbox One or PS4. I'll have a list of my PC specs on the screen, as well as the requirements for Fallout 76. I'm running the game on high, with the exception of shadows, which I have on medium, although when I first launched the game, everything was auto-set to ultra. I turned things down just to make streaming and recording easier. The first time I played the beta, I ran into almost no issues at all. I ran the game at a consistent 60 frames per second, didn't run into any lag, network or otherwise, and everything in the game felt incredibly smooth. The next 2 times that I played the beta, I ran into a few more issues. During those second and third gameplay sessions, I experienced a decent amount of lag, frame rate dips, as well as a graphical issue in which all bodies of water were completely invisible. You could see the textures for muck or animations for waves and such, but the water itself seemed to be gone. A couple other YouTubers I know had the same issue with the water, so this seems to be a somewhat common glitch, and possibly something on the server side rather than on the client side. As for the lag that I experienced in the later sessions, some of the people that I played with on my stream on the second day said that they were running into the same issues. Part of the beta is to stress test the systems, and I'm hoping that the lag during the second and third day of the PC beta was simply due to overworked servers, and that Bethesda is already working on a solution to this. Graphically, the game is beautiful, and without a doubt the best looking game Bethesda has put out so far. While it is very similar to Fallout 4 graphically and design-wise, there are some obvious improvements. The colors in Fallout 76 are much more vibrant, and the lighting system almost feels like it has been overhauled. I always felt that Fallout 4 felt very undersaturated in terms of color, so it is nice to see that Fallout 76 has a bit more color and vibrancy to it. It definitely helps bring the game to life. For comparison's sake, I have an EMB installed on my modded version of Fallout 4, as well as some texture mods, and I still think that Fallout 76 on vanilla looks better. To me, that is a really great improvement, and it shows that Bethesda is getting more out of the engine than they have before, even with its age. Now, let's talk about gameplay, the real core of the game. I think that the gameplay of Fallout 76 is its strongest asset, and that's what will keep players coming back for a while. Combat feels great, better than Fallout 4's even. Melee in particular has been a lot of fun for me, and I traditionally stay away from doing too much melee in the Fallout games. Bringing back weapon and armor degradation and repair is yet another gameplay feature that I was happy to see, and I think that the new method of using scrap and materials to repair gear is an improvement over the old system in which you just used a second copy of the weapon or armor to repair it. That being said, it feels like weapons and armor degrade a little too quickly right now. I'm not sure if this is something that will improve as you level up, but at my current level it seems that I have to repair my weapons every half hour or so, and it's not always easy to come across the materials you need. Just like Fallout 4, you never have enough adhesive. Speaking of materials, one common complaint that I've seen so far is that your camp has a storage of 400 pounds, which a lot of people have already hit and can't store any more materials because of this. While I haven't hit that limit yet, I can see this being an issue, and I think it's something that Bethesda should be willing to address. The camp is the ideal place to store scrap and materials, since other players aren't able to access your storage directly, making it the safest way of storing those materials for later use. Anytime you die, you lose any materials in your inventory, meaning that it's a risk to just keep a lot of that scrap on you. You can always return to where you died and retrieve your dropped materials, assuming that another player hasn't gotten to it already. That, and you get over-encumbered very quickly in Fallout 76, which is another reason why it's better to store your scrap in your camp on a regular basis. The game does have a survival mechanic as well, although it is much simpler and more forgiving than Fallout 4's survival mode. You have to eat and drink to keep yourself from dying of hunger or thirst, and you have to watch out for catching diseases. Diseases can be caught through a number of ways, including eating undercooked food or sleeping on the ground. You can either wait out diseases or use a disease cure. The PvP in Fallout 76 is far from the main feature of the game, and personally, I'm okay with that. I'm way more interested in co-op in the game than I am in fighting other players. Bethesda implemented a system so that those who don't want to participate in PvP aren't forced into it by the players who do. The way the system works is relatively straightforward. Say Player 1 attacks Player 2. Player 1 only does 5% of their normal damage to Player 2, and Player 2 is notified that they are under attack from another player. At this point, Player 2 can agree to the fight, in which case both players will do normal damage to one another, or Player 2 can simply ignore it, and Player 1 will only be able to deal minimum damage to them still. I like that they aren't forcing PvP upon players, but they are still providing a way to opt in on the fly. One thing about this system is that it removes the possibility for stealth-based characters to ever get the drop on other players. For people who like making stealth builds, there just won't be any way to create a scenario in which you'd be able to attack a player without them knowing. From my experience in the beta, I've noticed that a lot of people haven't been attacking other players, and I think the one time I got into a PvP scenario was because my group attacked someone in power armor, mainly just to see how hard it would be to take out someone wearing it. They were only wearing the power armor frame, however, but that alone still seemed to give them a bit of an edge in the fight. Moving on, let's talk about quests and storytelling in Fallout 76. Going into the game, I knew that there wouldn't be any human NPCs, and one of my concerns was that the game would feel empty and lonely as a result. For me personally, the game does feel incredibly empty and lonely. A lot of quests will ask you to go out and find someone, but you already know that said character will be dead, meaning that when you get to them, you just find a note or a holotape. Holotapes are the main form of storytelling in Fallout 76, which is nice in the sense that you'll have a collection of them to listen to whenever you want, but still doesn't detract from this feeling of being alone in the game world. One thing that I disliked about there being no human NPCs or quest givers in regards to the story and the lore. According to the lore, there are humans who lived outside the vaults and survived the Great War. These humans are the ones who went on to form the factions we see in the game, such as the Responders. You are able to join the Responders, but due to the lack of NPCs, this is done through computer terminals and listening to the appropriate holotapes. It just creates a divide between gameplay and storytelling, where you're joining a faction filled with these characters, but you know you'll never see them or interact with them. In some ways, it creates a lack of urgency in some quests. I think Bethesda's done a great job with the writing for Fallout 76, and the voice actors have done an amazing job with the delivery on all the holotapes, but I'm worried that a lot of quests might fall flat due to the lack of living, breathing characters in a massive world space. This method of storytelling through holotapes works better for some quests than others, and I've found that the side quest in which you follow the Overseer's tales throughout West Virginia is one of the most interesting so far. It's really cool to hear her talk about her childhood and growing up in Appalachia before the bombs fell, and then reflecting on how much everything has changed. For those of you looking for some great world building and environmental storytelling, Fallout 76 definitely delivers on those fronts. The map for Fallout 76 is massive. It's 4 times the size of Fallout 4's. The location and biomes feel varied, giving players a lot of different places to explore. There's not as many internal cells in Fallout 76 as there were in Fallout 4, but this doesn't mean that there's a lack of buildings or ruins for you to comb through. A lot of buildings that you would normally expect to be in interior world space are integrated into the overworld, meaning that you'll see a lot less loading screens as you play through the game. There are of course several interior locations, and the ones I've been to so far have all been a lot of fun to explore. Two that immediately come to mind are Vault-Tec University, as well as a mine that Al and I went through that was crawling with Scorched. Exploring the map is a lot of fun, and whether you're playing solo or with friends, it'll keep you occupied for a long time. If anything, I think it's Bethesda's best map for a Fallout game so far, but if anything, it makes me a little sad that this location wasn't saved for a traditional single-player Bethesda game, NPCs and all. Personally, I think Fallout 76 is much more fun with friends than it is playing solo. There are certain things in the game that I recommend doing on your own, such as the main quest, as well as the Overseer's side quest in which you follow her trail and find her diary-style holotapes. For quests like these, it's easier to play alone so that you can focus on the stories and the holotapes, rather than telling your friends to shut up for 5 minutes at a time every time you get a holotape. Outside of these quests, I found that playing alone got boring after a while. Playing with friends and having a group to explore all the locations with makes for a really fun experience, and one of the highlights in my gameplay so far on stream was when Al and I got a handful of viewers following us around, and we cleared out a super mutant camp with a level 16 boss at the end. The highest level person in our group was level 11, with everyone else ranging between maybe 7 and 10, meaning that the fight would have been much more difficult, if not impossible, on your own. One thing that I think the game needs is a text chat feature, as well as push to talk. If anything, I was surprised that there wasn't a push to talk feature in the game already, and that by default you're immediately opted into voice chat. Starting up the game and immediately hearing other players when I was in character creation was a bit of a surprise. Having text chat on PC would be really useful for communicating with other players, especially for players who are using voice apps such as Discord to talk to their group rather than the in-game chat. I'm hoping that these features are in the works, or that Bethesda is at least aware of the fact that people would like them implemented into the game. Coming from games like Elder Scrolls Online and Destiny 2, it feels really weird not having text chat as a means to communicate with players outside of your group. At the end of the day, Fallout 76 is an enjoyable game. It feels like a Fallout game, and it lets us play with our friends. People have wanted co-op in Bethesda games for as long as I can remember, and mod authors have worked on co-op mods for Morrowind, Fallout 3, Skyrim, you name it. The Skyrim co-op mod is the one that has come closest to completion so far, but there are still issues with quest synchronization. Even in Fallout 76, I noted that there were a couple of instances in which shared quests across a group didn't seem to sync up properly. And for all we know, this is a limitation of the engine, and one of the reasons why we're without NPC quest givers in the game. I'm not one of the developers, so I can't say for certain. All I know is that the game feels less lonely when playing with friends, and that's one of the reasons why I prefer playing with a group. I don't think that Fallout 76 is for everyone, and that if you buy Bethesda games because of the characters and their quests, this game might be worth passing on. But hey, this isn't Fallout 5. This is something of a spin-off game, and Bethesda wanted to try something new. I think there's a lot of things that Bethesda got right with Fallout 76, between the graphical upgrades, the map and locations, as well as how much fun it is to go exploring and fighting with your friends. I hope that we see a lot of content updates for the game, because I think that's what will keep it alive beyond its first year. Right now, we know that we shouldn't expect mods and private servers until late 2019, but between now and then, there's still a lot that Bethesda can do to keep the game fresh. In the end, I enjoy the game. Not as much as I do, say, Skyrim or Fallout 4, but I still think that it's a solid experience. For those of you on the fence about Fallout 76, I hope this video gave you the information you needed to help make your decision. I, for one, am curious to see what Bethesda does with the game after launch, and plan on playing a fair amount of it with friends. Thank you for watching.